Vi har hittat en fantastiskt fin, stor diamant som ni har hört talas om också. Så att, jag tänkte inte säga så mycket, utan jag lämnar över till bolagets VD, William Lambert.
Thanks, Robert. And again, thank you very much for coming to listen to me present. What I would normally do is I'd normally go through and I'd jump straight into sort of Lucara and sort of the great things that they're doing on site and Botswana and things like that. But I thought, as I start off this evening, because of what happened during 2015 and the general market, I'm actually going to spend most probably about the first 6 or 7 slides, so 15-20 minutes, just talking about the diamond market. I think there's a lot of uncertainty when people like De Beers put out a report stating that diamond prices are down by 8%. Everybody who is in diamonds sees their diamond price decrease. And I think it's important to understand just where Lucara actually fits into that part of the diamond market, what we have which is different, where we have a certain level of insulation, and then the general drivers of where we see the diamond market going and really what's affecting it over the short term. I think for me it's a lot easier to talk about the diamond price and sort of what the market looks like versus having to stand up here and try and guess what China's doing on the copper price. So hopefully I'll be able to make a little bit more sense on that. So really, if we look at our business, there are sort of obviously the key factors which drive it. When we look at the long-term factors, and I'm going to come back to this one because this is most probably going to be sort of a lot of what I'm going to talk about, and it's consumer preference trends. So I'm going to jump back to that one a couple of slides down because I think that's most probably going to start to paint a picture of what needs to happen in the market going forward. The other one, macroeconomic things, these are just if you look at 2008, GDP, growing wealth in developing countries, those types of things, that's fairly easy to understand. That's really what is going to drive how many people actually have money to go out and buy diamonds. And then the supply fundamentals. And I think the next slide actually looks at supply demand, where we see new demand or new supply coming from, and what we actually expect in terms of overall consumption of diamonds. And then on the short-term side, it's volatility in your macroeconomic things. We see that every day. Oddly enough, if you look at what happened, we were anywhere close to 230 when after the announcement of the recovery of the stones, which Robert spoke about. And already, because of macroeconomic things, when the market is down, everybody seems to want to sell. And it's sort of, there's nothing much that we can do about that. But I think having an understanding of where Lucara fits into the global market is quite important. The pipeline, and this comes down to efficiencies. So it's another thing I'm going to talk about when we talk about the consumer demand and what we see in terms of growing inventory in polished, as well as the growing inventory rough, and sort of how that is actually playing into the general pricing of diamonds. Market confidence, and this is specifically in the midstream players. These are the guys that are actually coming to us to buy our diamonds. How much confidence do they have in that they're actually going to be able to find buyers for polished goods, and then obviously their ability to raise equity. Do they actually, that's the next point, do they actually have access to liquidity? And the way diamond sales works is if we wanted to go to the bank and get money to buy a parcel of rough diamonds, they will only do that, obviously, if we have a very, very long history with the bank. But secondly, if I've been buying diamonds for a while, I actually have to have a receivables invoice. So I have to be able to demonstrate that I've got money coming in for the inventory which I've got before the banks will loan me more money. And obviously, if we're not moving stuff out the back end of the pipeline, we're not getting those receivable invoices. And that's what starts to put pressure on the amount of money which people actually have for the buying of rough. So I'll come back to the point on the top now. So when we look at the overall supply-demand fundamentals, so if you haven't, and you're welcome to, Bain & Company every year put out a status of the diamond report, and their 2015 one came out early in December, so I could be the first people to have these slides in. So this is now their estimate of what is going to happen to the market. So the blue line is, and then the red lines on there, that is supply. That is what the mines are currently producing. This big jump here, I'll get to, it's sort of 3 new mines which are coming on stream at the back end of 2016. The Firestone, their operation in Lesotho, around about 1 million carats. We have Stornoway, the Renard project in Canada, also coming on stream the back end, maybe early 2017. They're looking at 1 million carats. And then the big one, which is Gachagua. That's a joint venture between Mountain Province and De Beers. They're going to be producing around about 5 million carats. We've got about 7 million carats of new production coming into a market which is already a little bit backed up. And I'll get to that. So when we start to look at how that is actually going to affect it, I wanted to point that out before I get into specifically talking about what is happening in the diamond pipeline. So it's important to see what is actually going to come on and how that's going to affect it. So very basically, Stornoway, or the Renard project, hang on a second, I'm going to do this. So we're talking about Renard, Gachagua, and the bottom one, the Firestone or the Dickamon project. So just quickly on these ones, this is what they've actually used to predict those 2 red lines, which come out. And the reason why there's 2 red lines is this project, which is quite a large volume if you look at the second curve down there, Star Ryan. I don't think it'll be developed in my lifetime. It's just very, very low grade. It is very challenging. $3 billion capital expenditure. I just don't think that that's going to go. We're even in here as well. Lace is coming on. Koidu is almost ready to shut down. And the other Bunda one, they actually have that starting in 2017. We met with people from Rio. That's actually most probably closer to be around there, 2021. So that actually helps to streamline out, because a lot of the production which is currently coming out is going to start to trail off 2021, 2022. So if I jump back, sorry, you can actually see it starts to trail off almost immediately, sort of in 2019, as the big mines. So the De Beers mines, the Russian mines, they are now getting to a point where those mines are, some of them 600-700 meters deep on an open cast. That's a fairly big hole. So as they start to ramp down production, because it just becomes too expensive to either go underground. If they do go underground, it's less production as well. You can't produce the same volume from an underground versus an open cast mine, and it becomes more expensive as well. So that's why you see this almost automatic drop-off in what the mines can actually produce. That is then sort of confirmed by the amount of exploration money which has been spent. Lucara, with our $7 million exploration budget, is actually one of the highest. People are just not spending money trying to find the next diamond mine. And if you did find it, by 2030, you'd be lucky if you were in a position, especially if it was in Canada, in a position to actually develop it. We're looking at, on average, minimum, if you're lucky, 8 to 10 years in Southern Africa, but normally 10, 14, sometimes 16 years to actually get a deposit which you discovered now into production. So that would be way off, and I don't think we're going to be around there. So, and then of course you've got the green lines, which is their baseline. And on IDEX this morning, there's a lot of doom and gloom. I hate looking at the news because it's all negative. I think for people in the diamond industry, every silver lining has a cloud. But oddly enough, on IDEX this morning, they had very, very positive information on the consumer market in India. They're talking about sort of the luxury goods market in India increasing by up to 25% this year. Now, I'm not sure where they get their numbers from, but they were actually talking about diamond jewelry, specifically because of growing affluence in the middle class, middle to upper class, in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, looking at consumption of diamond jewelry increasing by up to 35%. Now I look at the population of India, and it's sort of one of the, I've always been bullish on India, I think even more so than here. It's a gradual decrease, but that coupled with sort of more people having more money to buy diamonds actually starts to add into the overall fundamental of what we see in the market. So, interestingly enough, when we start to look at, people were very concerned 3 or 4 years ago about Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe suddenly was going to be producing 20, 30 million carats of diamonds from the, excuse me, from the Marangi diamond fields. And if you look at, yeah, so Zimbabwe is this grey one. They went from nothing, up, and already it's decreasing. So where the market actually thought that there was fear because there was going to be this sudden flood of diamonds coming in, if you look at the numbers, pretty much all the way since 2010, it hasn't actually changed much. We expect the 2015 number to be around about 128 million, and then potentially we'll see it going up to about 135 million with the new mines which are coming on stream. But if you compare 135 to the max of 166 in 2005, 2006, we're still 40 million carats. 40 million carats is a very decent pile of diamonds. So we're not getting to those points where the mines have historically been able to produce. And I don't think we will ever see that in the future, not unless they find something which is very, very rich. And indications are it's going to be very large as well to find 40 million carats. So I think if we look at the volume of diamonds which are going to come out over the next 5, 10, 15 years, it's going to be sustainable in the round about 135, 136 million carats, which is what they talk about when they look at those supply-demand fundamentals. We don't have to go through that one. So this is obviously what scares people. And it comes down to sort of what you see here. As polished prices have actually started to slow down, they've started to decrease. It takes a while, but that's now started to play into rough diamonds. So this is where I get to sort of paint pictures. If we go back, I'm just going to check the next slide. If we go back maybe 10 years, and we look at where luxury goods actually sat in terms of people's preference for discretionary spending. Luxury goods, and this is handbags and sort of very expensive items, sat at number 1 and number 2. And for the longest time they were up there as De Beers did their generic marketing, and they were out targeting, and I'm looking, there's far more males in the audience, so they were targeting you to go out and buy diamond jewelry for the lady in your life. And it was very, very successful. 13 years ago, De Beers said, that's it. As the other mines and sort of Australian mines started to produce, they said, you guys can now be responsible for generic marketing. And they stopped it. And they started to focus on branding of their own goods. And what they've now found is that generic marketing is vital for the industry. So it's taken a long time for that overall mindset. If people are going out for a gourmet dinner, and it's a couple and it's a special event, so it's only once a year, they're going out for an anniversary dinner. The two of them are going to spend, in Sweden most probably a little bit more, but it's in North America, between $200 and $300. And you say, well, what type of diamond jewelry would you get for $200 to $300? And it's not a 1 carat engagement ring, it's actually something which you would buy from the smaller jewelries, the mom and pop stores from Walmart. So when you take that in, you say, well, if we now relate that back to that diamond pipeline, and let's assume the diamond pipeline is fairly thick. On the bottom, we've got sort of the lower quality goods, the smaller goods. As you go up, they get larger, better quality. And right on the top, you've got, oddly enough, the stuff that Lucara produces. The very high value, very large stones. So if you now look at diamonds, which a piece of diamond jewelry, which is anywhere up to, let's say, $1,000, it's going to lie in, it's going to be sort of clusters of little stones that they've made up into some piece of jewelry. And that all comes from the bottom of the pipeline, which is not being consumed because people prefer to go out for a gourmet meal. So what we've seen is because the diamonds aren't flowing to the consumer out this end of the pipeline, we've seen growing inventory of polished goods in the smaller, lower quality lower cost size fractions. That's also been exacerbated by the efficiencies within the Indian cutting centers. So they would take a 0.75 carat stone, so most fully, say 4 millimeters by 4. That's a very small rough stone. Historically, that would produce 1 diamond. They will now laser scan that stone, they will map out all the inclusions, and they will polish 2 stones. One large one, maybe 0.3 carats, another one which is very small. But they're producing 10-15% more volume from the same volume of rough. So we've seen growing inventory here in the smaller quality because for the same volume of rough. But these guys are now choked up. They're not moving out the pipeline. So we've got growing inventory of polished goods. And if we look at what De Beers, Alrosa, and Dominion, the 3 largest producers, have as growing inventory of rough, it's in the size categories which produces this. Jumping back, and I want to go to the next slide. Well, not that one, I'll come back to that one. We then look at what does Lucara produce and where does our value come from? So when there's a report from De Beers or Alrosa or something on the diamond market where the sky is falling, diamond prices are down by 8 to 15%. That has affected the entire market. But when you look at where Lucara's value comes from, we're actually looking at, and it's where we're talking about stones which are smaller than 2 carats, which is the sum of those 2 there. It is a very, very small percentage of our production which is actually affected by what De Beers puts out. More than 70 and it's 79 there, it's an average 75% of our revenue comes from stones which are not affected by the growing inventory in both the rough and the polished. And the reason why I can say that is we look at the cyclic process of money. So when we have an exceptional stone tender, we have a look at the clients that have bought and we see how quickly they come back with money to rebuy. And if they're sitting at sort of positions 3 and 4, we know that they're not urgent buyers. They haven't actually sold goods that they bought from us over here to come back. And if you have a look at the quarterly results for the major producers, all of them actually will state that what they've sold is their higher value, larger goods. There is none of that actually in inventory. So when we look at Lucara's production profile and what the general market says, we are going to be affected by what they'll say that the decrease in diamond prices have been. And I'll give you an example. De Beers have a site at the end of this month. There's a good chance coming out of that they're going to say that we drop prices by 8%. And I'm willing to bet Lucara's share price goes down. Not because of anything which we have, but because we are grouped in with the general market, because the people don't understand. Our production profile is very, very different to the general market. The general market has an average diamond price of most probably between $90 and $105 a carat. Ours is sitting just under 600. We have the reason for that is because of this very large component of our revenue that actually comes from the sale of our large and exceptional stones. So where everybody else is seeing a decrease, yeah, we see a decrease in this, most probably 20% of our revenue will actually see an 8 to 20%. But further to that, and the reason why I actually have this, Diamonds 101, it's how do you actually value stones? So where do they get their numbers from? So the way we actually sell our diamonds also means that the decrease which De Beers will see shouldn't actually affect us as much. And the reason why I say that is, if this was a parcel of diamonds, De Beers would say it's worth X. And it's the same as going to H&M. I have an example. So I haven't told the story yet. So I'm in New York and we're out marketing, and the person who's taking me around doesn't have a tie. Oddly enough, he's from Sweden. So we run out and he has to find a tie. We go to H&M. And they had the ugliest ties ever. But he insisted on buying from H&M, maybe because he was Swedish, but it looked like a school tie. And when he went to the counter, I think it was equivalent to $60 US for this tie. And he paid it. That's the same as what happens. The clients who want large volumes of diamonds, they cannot go to anybody except your 3 majors, and mainly it's De Beers and Alrosa. So they actually have the ability to say, if you want that volume of diamonds and those qualities, it's going to be, say, $100. We could have the same quality diamonds, and when we say to the people, they come into our clients, we say, what do you believe it's worth? So take your margin, your cutting costs, etc. into that. So when we sell, we're selling knowing that they're going to make money. When sort of the majors sell, they're actually specifying. So they will know whether they're going to make money, but their valuation is very different to the way we sell. So ours technically are already being sold at market, because we're saying, what do you believe it's worth? And if they're not making money, it's their own fault. they're the ones that are actually doing a poor assessment or paying too much for it. But the way we actually